Today I'm going to take you through step by step how to make low poly armor inside of Blender. So let's just hop straight in. Okay, so here we are in Blender, and if you want to see what I'm clicking while we go into this tutorial, check in the bottom left, and let's just get started. Now, the first thing we always need is a concept. So I have this random image I found on Pinterest. It's probably AI or some garbage, but we can use it as a base idea, and it's going to be useful for me to show you the workflow that I would go through to make some armor. Okay, so the first thing you need is your base character. So this is a Cinti style low poly character I made in one of the previous videos on this channel. All right, so the first thing I want to do is I'm going to select my mesh and press tab to go into edit mode. All right, so now we're going to select some faces of our mesh to use to create the shoulder piece. So to do that, I'm going to make sure I'm in face select. You can press 3 on your keyboard to do that. And then I'm just going to start selecting some faces while holding shift that we are going to use as a base, like this. Okay, doesn't matter too much because we're just going to use this as a base shape and we're going to move a lot of these faces around. Okay, next thing I'm going to do is press shift and D to duplicate like this. And then to just leave it in place, I'm going to press escape. And then to actually separate it out into its own object, I'm going to press P and bar selection. Okay, let me go to object mode by pressing tab again. Now if I go into wireframe by pressing Z and go into wireframe, I can now select over here and then select again, and you'll see now we have this piece selected. Okay, I'm going to go into edit mode of this one, and then I can press A to actually see my mesh. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add a modifier, and then in the search, I can just click on it and go search for solidify, or you'll see it is right here. Okay, now we have a solidify. We can drag up the thickness. I'm going to hold shift to move it a little bit slower and then drag it to the left. And then you see there, that has given us some thickness to this piece. The other thing I want to do is I want to add a mirror modifier to this so I can get it on the other side. Cool, so I'm going to go add modifier, search, and I'm going to go to the mirror. Okay, so you see now it's coming from one side to the other. Now, if you actually want to be able to see each point of the face, like over here, we can click on this little triangle and you'll see now we can actually see the actual solidified mesh. Okay, so what I want to do is I'm going to go to vertex select and then alt left click to select this edge, because I think there's a couple too many edges. So I'm just going to get rid of this one. So X, and I can go dissolve edges. Okay, and then let's start changing this into more of the shape we're looking for. So I'm going to go into my front view and then select this vertex over here and start pushing it out into kind of where we want the shoulder piece to start. Then we can kind of just give it like a nice curve from one side to the other. So I'm going to pull this up to like there, select this one, and we're pressing G to move, by the way. So there and to there. Okay, you see, so we're giving it a nice curve. Now we can repeat it with the next vertices. So I'm going to kind of push this in a little bit, then select this one, G, and then select this one, G, okay? And then over here, let's maybe pull this one in so we can give this like a nice, we're going to kind of taper it out like this. So if you want, you can also hold D and actually just draw a shape that we want to kind of emulate. So let's go kind of something like, so there, now we can do the same thing on the bottom. So move this down a little bit, follow the shape like this, and then pull a vertex in like that. Don't worry if you have them clipping, because that just means we need to go to another view and start changing it. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to click on the top view like this, and now we can see what the other angle looks like. So for this, we want to probably make the lines a little bit straighter. So I'm going to pull this one in a little bit and just selecting them, G, and then you can just left click when you are done. Same thing, so we can kind of just move these out, maybe give these further ones a little bit of a curve themselves, like this. Okay, and then I'm going to select these and then do the same thing. We can even just move them out, just G and Y, and then we can just pull them out like this. Okay, so you see there, looking a little bit better. And now we can go back to the top view and just give it a nicer shape as well. Okay, we're going to do the same thing for the back. Let's just pull these out, maybe pull this one back, and then we can do there, giving it a nice shape. Let's go to the back view so we can click on here again. And then I'm going to do the same thing, giving it a similar shape to the front, giving it a nice curve like this. So with that drawing, it also gives us like we're giving a similar shape from the front to the back, which is also quite nice. Okay, now it's important that you go spin around your mesh, because that allows you to see more shapes and see if it's looking good from the other angles. You see, I'm not quite happy with this piece right here, but you see there, that looking pretty decent. I may want to scale this down a little bit, so you can also press A to select everything, scale it down, and you see it's currently scaling down to the center, but that's because I have this set to 3D cursor, which you can see if I turn on 3D cursor in my viewport overlays, and I can change that up here to median point, and then that will allow me to scale it. So I'm just going to scale it down a tiny bit and then give it a slightly less thickness. Now you can see it's scaling back to the base, but if you want to kind of push it out a little bit, you can also use Alt and S to push it out with the shrink and fatten tool. Okay, there we go. That is looking quite nice. I think the last thing I'm going to do is just push these vertices forward to kind of mimic the shape of it. And we can also maybe select this last edge and push it in a little bit. And there we go. By the way, if you are wanting to learn how to make low poly characters inside of Blender and want the full step-by-step guide, then go check the first link in the description to grab my low poly character course. Back to the video. All right, now in the reference, we also have a similar piece that kind of is just below it. And by the way, if you want to get rid of your annotations, if you drew them, go to N panel, View, scroll down to Annotations, and you can just click minus. But what we want to do is we want to kind of duplicate this edge that we have over here and then push it down and then kind of have it overlay. So we almost can start stacking them like this. Okay. So to do that, we can go here again, delete our annotations. Then I'm going to go select these edges. So Alt left click to select this whole edge. We can go Shift and D again to duplicate. Press Escape to leave it in position. And we can press P by selection. Okay, let's go back to object mode, and you can see we have these lines here, or you can just go find it in your outliner in the top right. So you see, there's our edge. And the nice thing about duplicating is that also keeps the same modifiers. So all the same settings are going to be on this mesh. Cool, I'm going to go to the front view. I'm going to press Tab to go edit mode again, and then we can go press A to select everything, and we can go E to extrude out. Okay, so you see here. Now, you can see, obviously not looking great, but we can start working with this. I'm going to go top view, and then I'm going to just rotate and push this back a bit. So it's kind of following the shape of the arm. Okay. And then what we can do is we can probably also take this with A and press Alt S to, again, shrink and fatten in. And then let's just move a couple shapes or vertices around just to start following the shape of the arm a bit more. And we can kind of start seeing if this is going to kind of start stacking well. So I found that you can kind of start doing more of a thing like this where you push these up. So you're making room for the next layer of faces. Okay, that looks pretty decent. But the last thing I might do is just make this a little bit thinner. So like this. And then we can take this, Alt S, bring it up a bit. Cool. Then what we can do is we can either duplicate this into a new object, or we could just go in edit mode, Shift and D to duplicate, and then just push it forward. Okay, so you see that that's now kind of offline, like not aligned again. So we can go top view and then just push it back, and then we can just go grab this edge right here and then just push it in, and then we can go into wireframe and then find this vertex so that we can go push it kind of inwards so that they're not lying, they inside the other one, so they are stacking a little bit better. Okay, there we go. So that's 2, and that is looking pretty good. All right, let's progress down to the forearm. So it's going to be a slightly different but pretty similar method. So I'm going to select my base mesh, and I'm going to go into face select, and I can go Alt and left click on this horizontal edge, and you see that selects the whole edge like that. And then we can go Shift and D to duplicate, and we can press Escape to leave it in position, P by selection, and you see now it's its own object. Again, so we might have to, like if you select, you can't really find it. So either go Z wireframe and select it, or you can go find it in your outliner. And if you want, we can also start naming these pieces. So I know there's technical names for this, but we can go give it just like a shoulder piece, kind of like shoulder. And we can just call this like shoulder, I don't know, smaller kind of thing. I'm not usually this organized with projects, but it does help a little bit. And then here we can just call this like forearm. Okay, now since we never actually duplicated this mesh, we don't have the same modifiers, but what we can do is we can select this one, then select the other mesh, and then go on each of these modifiers, go on the drop down, copy to selected. So you see now it has the same solidifier. Scroll down to the mirror, click on this, copy to selected, and now you see it's both mirrored and has the correct solidifier, which is really nice. Okay, so now what we're going to do is, again, press tab to go edit mode, and this should, since we copied it, should also have this little triangle so we can actually move the vertices around. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go Control R to add an edge loop, and I'm going to slide it so it's quite far up to the top, so then we can start taking this and changing the shape. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to grab these vertices, because you kind of want to make it more like a piece like this that flares out. So we could even take these two, push them up like this, and scale out. Okay, and then if you want to give it like a similar curve, you could also like move these vertices. And then if you want in the reference, we kind of have more of a one side edge here. So you could add that, and then we could push these in to give it more of a like peak going in here. So it's more sharp edge. Cool. And then similar thing, we could go to the other side, Control R, add an edge loop. And I'm going to give it quite close to the end. And we could also probably scale these in slightly, or just give this a slightly thinner amount, but I'm just going to give it slightly scaled in, and then grab this outer piece and scale that up. Okay, again, let's go front view and then do a similar thing, because remember, like with the armor, you need to be able to move your hands and stuff like that. So if we give it a cutout like this, then that's going to allow us to move our hands more. So there, we can do something like this. And then you can also make the judgment of if it looks too thin or too thick. So you can also bring it down. And then if you have any clipping, just make sure to scale it up. So you see if I scale this all the way down, you see it starts clipping because we scaled it down. But I could have just scale it back up again. This. Okay, now remember, we don't want to just work on the front view, we also need to work on the side view. But before I do that, I'm just going to select these edges. I'm going to select this one and then G twice to slide it, just so we can push it up a little bit, or we can just go G and Z to push it up. And then same thing over here, I'm just going to slide it out a bit and push it down, so G, Z again. Okay, so similar thing on the back, Control R to add an edge loop, select it, and then we can just select these two, go G and pull it inwards like that. Cool. You can even follow this with the vertices below it as well if you want. Cool. Then on the back or the other arm, you can push these in. Same thing. And then give it a nice little piece like this. Okay. So start moving around and see if it looks good from all angles. Cool. Okay, cool. So the last thing for the arm is going to be creating the like little elbow guard type thing, if you know what I mean. So what we can do is go edit mode of the base mesh again, go to face view, face select, go Alt Shift left click this face and this one, so that we have the whole elbow. Then we can go Shift D to duplicate, again, escape P by selection, and there we go. We have our new object. There we go, and we can call it shoulder, no, not shoulder, elbow guard. Cool. And then we can go into, well, before we go to edit mode, again, select this, select the other mesh, go copy to selected, and copy to selected. Cool. So we can go into edit mode, and then what we can do is just go either add an edge loop and slide it in to the point where we need, or we could just take this outer edge like this, so vertex or edge select, and then just press G, and then press G again to slide it in like this. Okay. What I'd usually do is give it a decent gap, and then the front side I'll push in further, and then so we can go here on this side, G twice to slide, so we get like a decent thickness, and then we can select these two and then G twice again to slide it, so it kind of just gives it a bit of a thinner part, because that is going to be the part where you're bending. Cool. So this is usually going to be more of a like actual cloth piece than an actual metal guard. So this could just be some sort of base piece that we could just take the thickness and drag down, so it'd be some sort of cloth. And what we could do is go to the back, then go to face select, select these 6 faces, Shift D to duplicate, Shift D to duplicate, and then from here we can press P by selection, make it an object, and then you see we can grab it over here, and then let's create the thickness a little bit higher. So let's look over here, drag the thickness up, and then on here we can go to edit mode. Maybe we can also take it, so press A to select everything, and Alt S to shrink and fatten again. Okay, and then now we're just going to go to vertex select, and then we can select these two, push it out like that. Same thing over here, push it out like this. And I'm going to select these two, scale it up a little bit so we can make it more of a curve like this, and then go top view and push it out like there. Okay, let's get these looking a little bit nicer. So I'm going to push these outer pieces in and these like a bit out, so we give it like a nice curve there. And then same thing on the bottom, let's go give it a curve like this. Okay, and if you want to match it slightly similar to the other pieces, you could also add an edge down the side and do all sorts. You could like scale it up like this, you could push it out, that sort of thing. Just whatever gives you the look that you are trying to go for. All right, cool. And there we go. That is the arm done. Okay, as you see, this is a pretty repeatable framework that you can use to create all sorts of different pieces for your character. So it's going to take a bit, but this is the basic workflow I use every single time I'm going to create any sort of armor inside of Blender. And if you want to learn more about creating low poly characters inside of Blender, check the first link in the description to check out my low poly character course. If not, there'll be a video to my left that you can go watch right now. Cheers and have a good day.